My number 3 is an H.P. Lovecraft story.
Oh.
I am interested.
It's called At the Mountains of Madness.
Oh, isn't that the one that you're in?
No.
Oh.
That is not the one that I'm in. Sorry. I should have picked that one just because I'm in it. Anyways, At the Mountains of Madness is my personal favorite H.P. Lovecraft story because it explains the origins of man. And it's essentially, it takes place in Antarctica, and it was written during the time when exploring Antarctica was really popular. Antarctica is probably... Actually, you know what? I take that back. The woods is not the most terrifying place on Earth. Antarctica is. And because of how cold it is. And it's about this exploration of a few different people, a few different groups that go out there. And the main POV, who is basically, again, in typical H.P. Lovecraft fashion, it's written in the style of like a diary. They hear on the radio that they've discovered something really fantastical. And they describe what looks like the sort of weird alien that the dogs cannot stand. And they then go dark. They don't get any word from them. And eventually the main character, his name is Blake, and Pobody are the two main characters. They find the wreckage of the crew, and it looks like they all went mad. And... well, eventually they report that in, and as terrible as that is, but they got to keep going with the expedition. Eventually, they discover these mountains that dwarf Mount Everest in Antarctica. And they discover on the other side of this mountain, and within this mountain, is the remains almost perfectly preserved of an ancient alien civilization that was here millions of years even before the dinosaurs. And the rest of the story is them discovering the history of these aliens, that they probably created the dinosaurs. They created life on Earth as we know it. And their downfall. And this, of course, goes into the whole legend of... this features, the Old Ones, which is part of the Cthulhu mythos.
Yeah.
And everything like that. This is a part of the mythos. Arkham University's in there and everything like that. One of the creepiest stories ever written, in my humble opinion. Definitely my favorite one, because it has all the things that I love that I find scary in it. That is the idea that we're finding out where we came from, which I think is absolutely terrifying. It takes place in Antarctica, which is a terrifying location. It takes place where it's fucking freezing, because I've always thought cold locations are scarier than hot locations, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's usually more confined because it's like,
well, you can't
can't
go anywhere,
really go
you
anywhere
freeze
'cause
to
it's
death
freezing
and
cold.
everything like that, and it's harder to find food and everything like that. I've always frequently have said that hell can be frozen. And like that's one reason why I love The Terror so much, and so on and so forth. But yeah, a really great story. Guillermo del Toro wanted to make it forever. He still does, apparently, but no one will greenlight it. Yeah, no one will greenlight it. And like they discovered this pocket remnants of like a species of penguin that have gone blind because they are in the darkness so much, and they're like really creepy and inbred and everything like that. It's a really creative story. It was written in a time when it wasn't mainstream to get the idea that we came from alien origins, or that something created us. And to me, some of the mundane horror of At the Mountains of Madness is the fact that what created us originally created us for food. We were cattle, and eventually they discovered that we could, we weren't really us back then, but we could become intelligent and everything like that. And eventually we escaped, and their downfall led to us becoming free, quote unquote. And again, it's not really like us. It's what eventually would turn and evolve into
yeah,
us,
yeah.
and so
Yeah.
on and so forth. And all life on Earth stemmed from this one alien civilization that came down here from the skies. And like there's a massive war that happened several times where there was like a two of the species of these people, those who were on land, which were in Antarctica, which at one time was a jungle, and then at the time of their existence, and then there was another group underwater, and they hated each other, and they constantly went to war with each other. And so on and so forth. And it's the fucking world building alone in this book is fascinating. And it's written because it's from the point of view of a scientist. It's written very clinically, and that makes it creepier.
Yeah.
He describes some of these horrific things in such a matter-of-fact way that not only does it sell to you that hey, Blake's an actual scientist, or whatever this guy's name is, he's an actual scientist, but two, it somehow makes it scarier that he could be describing this stuff and be so nonchalant about it. And it's a phenomenal book. And short. It's really short. You could get this done in a day. And there's an audiobook on YouTube that I highly recommend too.
Yeah, that's nuts. Especially like the part of like mentioning that we might have been cattle.
Kind of.
To something like that.
Like we were cattle, and then we turned into like. Again, it's not us. It's I forgot what they were called.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It would
Yeah.
eventually turn into us.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
eventually became. They eventually became like slaves in a way because they were intelligent. So they started using them as a workforce and so on and so forth. And eventually there was like some kind of these things uprising and so on and so forth. It's really weird. And the world building alone in the story is really worth it. And I would love to see it made into a film. You know, an archaeologist going out to Antarctica. It would have to take place during the 1920s. It would have to be a period piece. That's the big thing with this.